All right, welcome to NGAdvocate Podcast 25. I'm Chris Dyer here with Viral Chhadua. We're going to go over everything that's been going on in the last couple of weeks since we've had Tyler Crawford on. Early voting starts Monday, and there's been a lot go on at these local meetings and behind the scenes, and it's just been it's been wild. And we're going to get into all that, and we're going to get into hopefully some of the guests that we'll be having on the next few weeks. So, Viral, what you want to lead off with today?
I would like to lead off with the fact that public participation in this current UDC comprehensive plan changes, specifically regarding revisions and additions, I would say, to the code to address high density housing and data centers, has been absolutely shit. So I think more people need to show up to these meetings. Well, I mean, they're not even meetings; they're just drop-ins. You go in there, planning staff is there with their stations, and you can ask them questions, give your opinions, and they'll tell you exactly where you need to send your comments to. So yeah, I went yesterday with my wife and my son, and at the Hall County Government Building. Funny enough, there's only one candidate that's shown up to these meetings, and that's Tyler Crawford. So do what you will with that information. But yeah, the usual folks too, Jody and a few others that are, I would say whistleblowers / advocates for Hall County, that are showing up. But Jody's been pretty much on the spot. When I talked to Katie, I noticed that South Hall's kind of just been like given to developers for high density housing at this point. But there are a few things that I do like, that we have, I would say, new requirements for high density zoning, which requires sewer and the infrastructure to be in place. So make it a little bit challenging for developers to come in and throw up 10,000 houses on 10 acres. Right. And yeah, so the entire thing about the community septic and whatnot didn't really pan out much. I didn't really get too much information on that. But I did like the fact that that's what the new zonings and new districts that they're trying to build absolutely require for sewer to be on site.
Right.
So yeah.
The thing is, back to, I don't want to interrupt you, but while we're talking about the community sewer, you were alluding to the Sardis Road project, I assume.
Yeah, and no, because they got rid of that. But I mean, even up in at Yellow Creek, which eventually got turned down, that was gonna be a community septic. That green space that they were talking about was gonna be a community septic, and I feel like there's just not enough information to do something like that when you have, unknowing. There's like a big question mark about the longevity of something like that.
Well, and it can't be good, especially you talk about, you got those rivers and creeks running next to it. And,
the Sardis one, I would be very cautious just because of the fact that, like you said, there's a massive creek that's right back there. So where's all that?
There's two creeks on the property.
Yeah.
And the lake not far from it. Then the one at Yellow Creek, it's got that creek that it backs up all the way onto the property when it rains a lot.
Yeah.
They fussed about it.
So, with that in mind too, it's like, all right, well, if we're going to have drain fields kind of leach into these streams and stuff, what difference does that make compared to 500,000 gallons of untreated water that gets dumped into the lake from time to time. So,
well, two wrongs don't make a right, but I know what you're getting
yeah,
at.
yeah. And I think, I feel like maybe the developers kind of look at it that way, especially Billy Powell and the likes. It's like, what's another 200,000 gallons throughout the year get kind of leaching into the lake.
Right.
But
see, on Sardis, we've even got the letter that we'll post online in a little bit on our Facebook group, and I'll put it on the website over the weekend. The EPA even recommends the Sardis Road not even be approved. They don't know, that it doesn't meet their requirements. And what's going to happen is the county's going to pass it and then put the onus off on the EPA.
Yeah. Or on the unsuspecting buyer later on.
Yeah. But back to the Universal Development Code.
Oh, so yeah, the Unified Development Code and whatnot. I had a good, I would say, a hour-long drop-in meeting with the planning staff and Katie Ahmad, I think her name is now. But yeah, it feels like we have folks in place at the moment that want to actually get the public involved and
well, and Katie's trying. She's putting out videos, she's putting out, it's just to the point to where these meetings are not, I think I read in the paper, not counting last night, they had 106 people or 108 people fill out the form online. I was one of those.
Yep.
And then they had 38 show up at the Mulberry the other night, and they hadn't released how many went the other night, but from everybody I talked to, wasn't a whole lot.
I still got to submit my comments also. So yesterday was just a discussion, if you will, with the planning staff.
Would you say 30 or 40 people showed up yesterday?
Yeah, I think 40 would be on the high end.
Well, that's what they said 38 showed up at Mulberry, and Tyler said it looked crowded at the very beginning of it. And I don't know, what do they do? Do they
well, maybe it looks crowded because there is a handful of staff there too. And I would say from county administration, if I'm not mistaken too. So I would say at least like 10, 15, 20 people might just be from the county. And then you got residents showing up.
And then we got one Tuesday.
Yeah, the last one's on June 9th at the North Hall Community Center from 6 to 8.
Yeah, I'm planning on going to it, and I'm hoping a lot of people come to it.
Yeah. So it's pretty well set up in my opinion. It's pretty much station to station to station. And then I believe the gentleman's name was Yamsi that's in charge of putting together the UDC and the potential ordinances and everything with or relating to data centers, essentially. So I had a good conversation with him in regards to the data center side. And one of the big things he was kind of emphasizing was the fact that this is becoming a major political issue at this point. So there's not going to be much of a change on that end except for what they already have. So because they had 100 and something comments come in, and out of that 90% were literally just saying no data centers, like no rhyme or reason behind it or anything like that, just said no data centers. So
and I tried to write detailed responses in my stuff. I posted some of my answers in the North Georgia Advocate group, and I understand that the commission's supposed, and the planning staff and everything, planning commission's supposed to do the wishes of the citizens. But at the same time, when you've got people out there with freaking knives and pitchforks spewing data that's 20 years old and not truthful data, you know, you can't really, I'm not saying serious, but you can't take it.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, these data centers do not use, when they say 1 million gallons a day, that don't mean they're taking say, for example, that last one, they're not taking 1 million gallons of water out of the lake every single day.
Yeah.
They'll take 1 million out to start with, and then they may take 5,000 gallons the next day or 20.
Yeah, and so I think that's the other thing too here, Chris, is the fact that again, we've talked about this multiple times over the few episodes during that time period where Project Turbo or whatever was trying to come in, is that these are developers. They have no idea what kind of technology, cooling equipment, what's going to actually get used,
right?
Because they're not the end user. And so one of my recommendations to the staff was also like, hey, you guys just need to tell them that if you're not the end user, this, you know, if you get this rezoning, all the plans, everything needs to be within that company's name or something, because it should not be a flip after a flip after a flip for these developers. It's not a money making thing when you're dealing with something that big that uses that much resources.
Right.
You need to have the end user be the applicant and be able to disclose exactly what they're intending on doing, because they're going to have more raw data. They're not going to stumble on their words when they're talking about, oh, well, you know, we're expecting 250,000 gallons, and then all of a sudden the next time you're changing it to 500,000, and then you're changing it to 1 million, and of course the public's going to freak out that because, like, hey, you have no idea what you're doing here.
Right. Well, the two main things that I really fussed about was no bill. If you don't do anything within the first 5 years, it reverts back to the old zoning.
Well, so I think the reversion is only 24 months, which is great.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good. I was good with 5 years because I know how things get held up sometimes. Because if you got an EPA issue or you got a this or that, you never know what's going to happen.
Well, even if you have any of those items, I feel like you should be able to do the vesting, which is just simply getting a land disturbance permit.
Right.
That shouldn't take very long. Like, as long as you can get that done within the first one, that's plenty of time.
Right.
Plenty of time. Even for somebody to go in there, if they rezone something from agriculture to high density or mixed use or anything like that, plenty of time for them to get it rezoned, flip it if that's their intention to do, or go ahead and get their engineering work done to get the land disturbance permit.
Right. And then the second thing that I did was I posted for data centers and for large developments. If it's an LLC from out of state, no. We need local businesses. We don't need companies incorporated in freaking Delaware or Colorado or Texas or wherever coming in and building stuff in our county. A lot of the times it's local businesses just incorporating shell companies just so they can hide the names. But a lot of the times it's not. They're just wanting to come in here, take advantage of our low taxes and our business and Georgia's business friendly, you know, atmosphere, and then flip it and make as much money as they can. And then a lot of times these local people that buy it are left holding the bag. We need to have local businesses if at all possible. You know,
I'd agree to that to an extent too, but you're also creating at that point a negative, and you're limiting the market for a lot of the property owners in Hall County, where if it's only local, you know, you're buying pool of potential investors that want to come in and flip, or not flip, but, you know, develop these properties and whatnot. Gets a lot smaller.
Hall County, I'm talking as long as it's in the state of Georgia.
And then say, yeah, okay, that's fair. I think that would be more fair.
As long as it's a Georgia company, because there's a lot of companies that own land from Macon and South Georgia. You know, they got farmland and, you know, they got stuff everywhere. As long as it's when I say local, I mean in state.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's a little bit more doable, because that still makes it a little bit easier for even an out of state company to come in, set up local shop, if you would, you know.
Yeah, they can
So yeah,
form an LLC here in Georgia or whatever and set up shop and then do business the right way.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
how
So
hard is there's just too much trouble. If they got their main offices in Texas or Delaware or Vermont or you can't communicate with them, you can't talk to them. I mean, you know.
well, not only that, but it's hard to hold anybody accountable when you don't know
Yeah.
who you're dealing with. I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah.
but that's the main thing, other than the high density, no more 10.6 units per acre or whatever when you're building apartments. And
Yeah, I mean that's okay though. Again, I think it's okay for stuff like that to go in as long as the infrastructure is there, meaning sewer.
right.
My main thing is you got to have sewer there. You can't put this stuff on a community septic. I think that's inappropriate.
Well, the way I looked at it when I put it in there is I was okay with 6 or 7 units per acre.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into 10, 12, 13, 14, you know, it gets overboard.
Well, I mean, I think like an apartment building is usually what 4, 8, 12, 16. Yeah, usually about 16 units for a 3-story apartment complex style buildings, because they usually have 2 at the back and a basement style setup, and then 4 on each level. So that's 16, and that's well. I mean, it might even be 32 per acre because they're not that land hoggish, if you will. So yeah, and again, like I said, I'm not opposed to it. I think it's more so just like, hey, you need to be on sewer.
Got to have the sewer.
Yeah, because it's just an environmental disaster waiting to happen with the community septic type system and whatnot.
Well, even if you have to dig wells or whatever, you know, what happens if the water table drops and so,
right. Well, and so that's the other thing too. I think the current comprehensive plan is helping kind of keep North Hall and East Hall rural as much as possible, and all of the high density or future high density usages are going to be towards South Hall, where it's already kind of developed, close to Buford, close to Gwinnett, and we're going to kind of keep that down there and let that continue being completely destroyed at that point. And I say completely destroyed, but at the same time, like, that's just going to continue to grow and let it grow. Anything that comes further up north is going to have to abide by certain standards as far as aesthetics go, and keeping the nature rural aspects kind of within the development too, which I think I think that's fair. But yeah, as far as 365 goes, I don't think that you're going to be able to fight much there. White sulfur up along 365, maybe even Kegel. That's going to be tough, but they are saying no residential up along those corridors essentially. So it's just going to be warehouses or commercial usage, and I think that's fair just because of, I mean, you're already next to 985 or 365, and so where else are you going to put these things unless you want this stuff to start propping up in your rural areas on farmland in the middle of nowhere type places where there's literally no infrastructure. You're going to have to give up some. You can't just be 100% against no warehouses, none of this, none of that. Like, that's not the, if you want to do that, you better have the money to back it up, go buy the property and pay the taxes on it.
And, like on, Kegel Road, it's got to stop there. I got a picture yesterday, and I get several of these. Transfer trucks out that roadblock several times a day, and they can't keep putting warehouses back in that area. But the other places up on down 365, that's what it was built for. That's why they ran the sewer.
Right.
I mean, but they've screwed it up by allowing all these high density developments go up through there. Lula's going to put in 1,200 homes, 1,160 homes or something. I mean, and that comes off of Hall County. They're not like Flowery Branch where they built their own sewer, to where they can handle their own development, with their own speed. We just got to follow the plan, and the numbers in the paper that kind of shocked me. according to the county, the growth by 2050, they're saying North Hall is only going to have 5,000 new households. Maryville Sardis 5,300. Gainesville up to 16,500. And East Hall up to 14,500.
Woo!
Chestnut Mountain 18,000.
That makes sense. Closer to the south end.
Right, and South Hall 15,000.
Yep.
So
no, that's literally why Jody's saying South Hall's cooked, because
it's done. I mean, they can't stop all the development that's already been passed to be built down there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
but I mean, and that's the thing though, Chris. I mean, you're close to Gwinnett at that end, so that's the only spot that it's gonna move up to. You know what I mean? Like,
you're
not gonna be able to completely kill that. What you want to try to push for is for the county to start allocating money for their end of the road widenings and start pushing a lot of this infrastructure through that they're supposed to be doing, instead of wasting it on a courthouse that's unnecessary, or buying property for a new courthouse that's unnecessary when you have land right on Brownsbridge Road and stuff like that. There's certain things you can battle. There's certain things you don't need to be battling and wasting your energy on.
What people don't understand is we're just talking infrastructure. We're not talking into the school end of it.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole nother bag of worms. I mean, you bring in 20,000 people, say roughly 15 for Chestnut Mountain, or 18 for Chestnut Mountain and 15 for South Hall. That's 30,000 people, roughly. And 4 per household. That runs you what? 4? I mean, that's 700 and something family. That's 7,000 families, and 40% of those are going to have kids in school. They're going to be school age kids. It's 40. Every 100 people is going to send 40 kids to the school system.
Right.
So you're talking, you're going to have to build 3 or 4 more schools by 2050, just in South Hall. And if they're saying 14,000 people, 13,500 going to East Hall, they have no intentions of following the UDC that's out there now, and only businesses up to 365 corridor.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that, because didn't East Hall just kind of get renovated?
Yeah, no,
the high school just got renovated not long ago. They're
going to have to build a new school between North Hall and East Hall anyway.
Yeah,
in the next 10 years. I mean, that's a given. Lula Elementary.
I mean, just have population growth right on, I would say, White Sulphur right there too, and 365. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, it's just because they combined Riverbend and White Sulphur and made Sandra Deal. They've already got 700 or 800 students at that school, and East Hall's full to the brim. North Hall's full to the brim.
I would think Sandra Deal is going to be already full just off of the apartments that are going up and down White Sulphur.
Oh yeah,
and the high density housing that's there. So yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, that eventually that's going to need a middle school and a high school too. So
yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I'm just trying to figure out where all these people are going to be building at East Hall. If it's not up, there's not that much. Well, it'll be hard to develop the rural parts of East Hall when it's all on septic tank and wells.
Right. Well, I mean, that's going to require at least, I would say, half an acre to an acre per home to be able to do a septic.
I mean, every farm in that area will be completely gone if that many people move over in that area.
Yeah. But I mean, are there sellers potentially? Yeah, I think there are.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there are. Yeah, But that just shocked me when I seen those numbers, and North Hall only getting 5,000. I just don't see that. I see North Hall getting a more building than East Hall, because North Hall's got 2 major thoroughfares going through it. You got Highway 60 and Highway 129.
Yeah, but a lot of the good old boys live in North Hall, so you might get a lot of pushback.
All of those guys in the North Hall that own the land, they're getting older, and their family can't. they won't be able to afford the property taxes on it.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Like Steve Gailey was telling me, his family still own, his aunt and uncle own the largest tract left in North Hall. I mean, it's, buku. I don't want to quote the acres, but he said their son don't have any way to be able to afford the property taxes on that when he gets and what happens if he may not want it putting into a conservatorship or anything like that. I mean, 'cause that's a lot of work and time and money still. So Hall County's fixing to be at the crossroads, and that's why we got to be careful of who we elect these next few elections.
Yeah, but like I said, like Jody's been saying too, South Hall's
cooked.
Yeah. South Hall is cooked.
What did Steve say? There's already how many? Like 57 or 67,000 units approved already.
Mm-hmm.
All over.
Yeah, so I think even with the reversion language going into the UDC, I would assume a lot of those are going to be grandfathered in, so they're not going to get changed back in 24 months or anything like that.
Now, what's this Katie's talking about? It says right here, another potential update to the UDC, the new zoning categories, RSF, residential single family, detached, and residential single family townhomes.
Yeah, so they're breaking it down in the residential zonings there. I think they're adding like 6 different categories to kind of help have something for high density housing or mixed use, but so that developers aren't abusing the planned development zoning.
Because the way she made it sound is right now there's really nothing in stone for them, so each developer presents a different freaking plan to them, and they've got
so there were supposedly there's like no standards or anything like that, so this kind of is going to unify everything. So again, with a planned development, the developer can come in and say, this is our standards, these are the standards we're going to put into this community, and then it's up to the Board of Commissioners to say, okay, those are acceptable or not, versus the county already having a set of standards that the developers have to abide by,
right,
or ask for variances on, and then the county or the Board of Commissioners decides whether they want to approve it or not. Which I think everywhere that I've dealt with, usually it's that way, where the county already has this in the UDC a set standards, and then if you need to make some changes to it, you ask for variances for those things. And so obviously those items would come up in public meetings, etc., where that has to be disclosed that, hey, we're asking for a variance from having X amount of trees to this many trees only, or we're asking for a variance for the setback to be this much, and then they have to justify why it's needed. It can't just because like, well, we're going to save money.
Right.
So it's got to have a justification behind it. And I think that gives the county and the planning staff and the planning commission, whenever that comes, and the Board of Commissioners a little bit more power in, being able to reject some of these applications because, hey, you don't meet our standards. We're not going to give you these variances. So if you want to do this, you're going to have to meet these variances, etc. They're not going to be able to deny it if they meet all the standards and everything's kind of in place. You cannot say no, because then you're going to only waste your tax dollars that you're sending to the county on legal issues. So yeah,
no, I agree. We got to have standards. It's hard to remember and cover everything. And I was talking to a couple of guys that got appointed to the impact fee board, and they're wanting that thing done in 4 months, and that thing's 500 freaking pages, that book on the impact fees, and they said they're only meeting once a month. There's no freaking way they can get that done in 4 months.
Hey, so I have a pretty good idea on this, okay, which is, how about we start looking at cutting spending
Exactly.
Instead of constantly looking for new ways to leech off of people.
Well, the guys that I talked to said that's their plan, just to really rip it up and start over from scratch, because they're still using fees that were in place that they put in. The one that they're based this off of was really written in 2003. And they've just modified it a little bit over time since then. Some of the fees are the same fees they've been charging for the last 24 years.
And that's the thing. It's everyday people, the residents, that end up paying for those fees too. These developers aren't paying for them. No. Yeah, and they're trying to justify it like, hey, the developers are making all this money. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's the residents that still suffer. Everyday people suffer.
Well, and they got to figure in, and what people don't look at it is like the sewer hookup. Say, what if we're only charging, I don't even know what it costs, it's around $2,500 or whatever it is. But what if the city's charging us $5,000 or $10,000? You know, we bought that, and we got to look at future maintenance. You got to look at, you know, that's not a static cost. That's what I'm saying. It's not a one-time fee. You got to figure in, I mean, you can't charge maintenance. I understand that in perpetuity, but you've got to figure that in. We can't be eating the costs on these developers not having to pay their part of whatever it costs to, because once we run out of sewer capacity, do you think the city is going to cut us a break to tap into more sewer? It just ain't happening.
Yeah, and then I mean, and at this point too, I think this is something that the county and the board of commissioners and staff, I guess, need to kind of work on, as far as working together with potentially the city of Flower Branch, city of Oakwood, city of Gainesville, and start figuring out, hey, what are we going to do as far as sewage goes and water treatment and all of that. And we need to start making investments into these items sooner rather than later.
Right. See, and I think the county did have a deal with White County for water and stuff for a while. But White County, they said that White County just got too high on their costs. And, well, no, that's not what it is. White County was charging you for what it cost them to actually operate the stuff. I mean,
right. I mean, it's not cheap. None of that stuff's cheap. So, yeah.
And plus, the city's been dumping in a ton of money to upgrade all their water facilities and their treatment plants. And
I mean, it's needed. That's the thing; it's needed. You have these chicken plants, but I think a lot of the chicken plants are also starting to make their own water treatment facilities on site, to where they're dumping the water back into the system and whatnot, cleaner than what they eventually got it, supposedly. How do I verify that? I don't know, but that's what I've been told by a few workers in that industry at the plants. So I'm going to take their word for it. But yeah, when you have private companies like that doing the work that the government should be doing, that you're collecting taxes for, it's kind of a slap in the face as to how efficient government really is.
Well, the government's just never efficient at anything, except the only thing they're efficient at is blowing money.
And that's what I'm saying. So I think even going back to this, impact fees and this fee and that fees only hurts the residents. Whereas, hey, let's start really narrowing down and looking at, where do we cut costs? Where can we save money? Where can we be a little bit more efficient?
And I wouldn't be opposed to the government getting out of it completely and bidding it out to private contractors.
Yeah. I think that's the thing with human greed too. It's, you bid it out to certain contractors and stuff. I think I think it could be done. Would definitely need it to be have a lot of guardrails to make sure that company doesn't start exploiting residents or start holding them hostage by any means for that infrastructure to be used. So yeah, and I think something like that is usually better off as public infrastructure. It's just a matter of having the right leadership from top down to be able to kind of run this. It's not that it's not doable. This isn't the federal government. Right. We're local level. A lot of this could be addressed, but we have commissioners and again from top down that are worried about their paychecks and commission checks.
Well, and the main reason I'd like to see it privatized is we can hold them accountable. If they don't do their job, by God, we can fire them.
Exactly.
Where when it's done by the government, you can't fire them. Like just this time, I'm just saying, if we caught one of the commissioners doing something wrong this time, you can only fire that one. What if you got? But if you got three, like we got the three amigos in on the Kahoot, you know, we can't get rid of all of them at one time. But if we got a private company that's in charge of it, we can put pressure on the commissioners to say, by God, you ain't doing your job, you're out of here.
Right.
They can't fire themselves and the employees that work under them that they approve the contracts for, you know.
Sure.
And that's a huge upside for me. I'd be all for privatizing everything. But that ain't never happening. We can work towards it and try to improve the government. And anything else about the UDC or the
no, I mean,
codes that we need to?
No, I would just say people just need to participate because you can't
get out and do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving you an opportunity to do it, and then as much bitching and moaning that people did on Facebook about, hey, we were never informed that this was going on, and then you got all of these developers and real estate people on the steering committee and this and that. Where are you? You need to be over here and being involved. They've given you multiple options to do it too. If you've done it online, great. I think it's better if you go in person and actually talk to the planning staff. Maybe you'll learn a little bit more. Instead of just sending an email or comment saying no data centers, like that's not really doing much.
No,
they literally cannot do anything with that information. That's not what this public input's for.
No.
You can't just say no data centers or no high density housing, and like that's a waste of a comment. And that's not really giving any kind of feedback aside from letting. Yeah, because at that, with those comments like that, it's just kind of giving the commissioners like
they don't give a damn. We do what we want.
Well, it's not that. It's a little bit of a political thing at that point. It's like, hey, I can't approve any of these because people just don't want them here.
Yeah, and
okay, cool. Like,
what we think's best, and they may not agree, but they ain't got no choice.
Right. And it's like, good luck. You're going to get sued. If it's in the comprehensive plan and they meet all the standards, you can't deny it.
Well,
you could deny it, but you're going to get sued.
Well, the people in Maysville found out the hard way. But that data center that's going in up there, a half a mile from Maysville Elementary or one of their elementary schools, they're up there raising sand and threatening to fire people and sue people. And hell, it's too late. It's already been voted for and approved.
Yeah.
They didn't care until it was approved, but once it gets to be up for a vote, it's too late.
Yeah, that they don't know there's already a data center there though. Like there's already been a data center there for 10 plus years. Granted, it's not as big of a footprint, but it's been there. It's been operating and they've been paying taxes. So like, it's been a net benefit to the community over there, and they just haven't realized it yet. And now, because of this misinformation and all of the stuff that's going, and there are data centers that I'm not a fan of either right now too, because you got surveillance state type data centers that are going into, and yes, we're literally building our digital prisons in our backyard potentially, but at the same time, you have to be objective about this, and that's why I say you have to have the end user.
Well, the bottom line is this: people worried about that, like you're talking about the imprisonment and the eye in the sky stuff. The government's already got it. That stuff's in big data centers in Washington.
I agree. Sure, but that doesn't mean.
But you're bringing it up because that's what everybody's starting to say and saying, "Look, it's a nanny stuff." It's already in place. It's been in place.
Sure, but we shouldn't encourage more of that to happen either. So there are certain companies like Planeteer and Flock and some of these companies where I would say, no, we don't want you in our backyard. We're not going to enable more of this. Is the NSA already doing some of this? Sure. Is the U.S. government already listening on this call and other calls and whatever else? Sure, I'm sure. But we don't need to enable private companies to be able to do this too, because private companies don't have to follow the Constitution.
Right.
And this is where things get really, really watery. And one of the reasons the government starts contracting private companies to do this stuff is because they can't, because of the Constitution.
Right. And I don't know if you've watched it yet, but the AMC show Audacity, The Audacity, it's about Silicon Valley companies. And it's basically about all this AI stuff and about how they get data, they sell data, and they're just one unethical person away from putting in basically controlling everything you do.
Yep.
You know, and it's 2 or 3 big companies that are fighting over. Some of them want to do it, some of them don't want to do it, some of them, you know, it goes into that. And I mean, it kind of hits home in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like what's going on with OpenAI and Anthropic, where one said, no, we can't just give you this without any guardrails to the Pentagon or the Department of Defense. And then the other one stepped up and said, hey, you can have all of this. We won't do any kind of guardrails just to get the government contract. So yeah, that's exactly
what it is. And there's guardrails in place, but you get somebody, I'm not just picking on Trump. Biden would have done the same thing, saying, no, you either do it or we're going to fire you.
Yeah.
That's just the way the federal government is.
It gets glorified under Trump. I would say the left only sees that stuff when Trump's in office or when a Republican's in office. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Nice. And no matter who was in charge, they would have been doing the same thing. Look, our military needs this. They play the scare tactics.
Yeah.
And it's gotten that way since 9/11, you know, and it's not slowed down. All right, now we had the forum Monday night. I watched the video of it. Tyler did a good job. When I'm talking about the forum, I'm talking about the Chamber of Commerce runoff forum that they had all the Board of Commissioners candidates there, except for one. And I bet you can't guess which one didn't show up.
Oh, man.
Shannon Davidson. You know, he called in on Zoom because he doesn't like to be able to. I've seen him in several public forums. He just don't do well in them. And you could tell he was reading his answers off a piece of paper. He wasn't genuine about anything that he said. And I'm not knocking him because I'm voting for Tyler. That's just the reality of it. I'd do the same thing if Tyler did the same thing, or if Kathy or Mark Turner.
I mean, yeah, we'd be picking on Tyler too if he was doing that. But
if you want somebody's vote, at least show up to the freaking things.
Mm-hmm.
He showed up at a 10-member Gainesville JC's meeting Thursday. You know, Tyler showed up too, but you know, come on, that ain't the same as showing up for a freaking.
Maybe it's hard for him to answer questions to adults.
I don't know, but
it was anxiety to answer questions to grown-ups that are actually going to go out there and vote versus younger folks.
And now he's got, I'm not saying he's behind it, but his people are behind it. His followers and supporters are going.
What is that, like 5 people up in Lula?
I know. They're accusing Tyler of heading up the lawsuit that the residents have filed against Thumbs Up, the cancer center that was approved up on Yellow Creek Road, that had a big opposition. It shouldn't have got approved, but it did. And now all the residents, there's an attorney up there that lives up there that, from what we understand, spearheaded the thing. But now they're going around saying that Tyler's the one that is behind it.
Yeah, I don't think that's just it. I don't think they have any decent positives about Shannon to push his image forward. So they're trying to bring Tyler down and trying to smear his image. Because that's all he's got. He's got nothing else.
You can pull the documents on peachcourt.com or whatever it is. It costs you like $5 to get the documents, and you can see who filed the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to pull it last week and it wasn't available, but it is available now. I'll pull it in a little bit, but Tyler's name is nowhere near it because I know people that have it. I mean, his name is nowhere near it. They're just trying to smear him because, you know, and I don't get it. You figure they'd be wanting to get the North Hall vote, and they're not going to get it by slashing Tyler's name, by slandering his name when he's been out there door knocking and getting to know these people.
Yeah. And that's the thing. He's been doing that at the meetings too. The only candidate is showing up to these UDC revisions and whatnot and actually actively participating in it. That goes for Shannon, but then also for Mark Turner also, which, you know, a lot of talk about change and this and that. And
well, you have may be coming out soon. Mark Turner's done some crap that's unforgivable.
Yeah.
You don't even know about this. I found out about it late last night. I'm not going to bring it up right now because I don't know exactly what the end game is going to be. But I will, if what goes on may go on, I'll be writing a big expose on here this next week. Enough's enough of this pissant, you know, this attacking people personally and going after their families and their livelihoods and stuff. I mean, it's got to stop. I've not said nothing wrong about Shannon or not. We have dogged his campaign and how his campaigns ran, but we've never come out and went after him or his family or threatened to do anything to them or anything. You know, politics is politics. When you start getting personal, it's way too much. You know, Jody's even had to go in and make her group private and kick people out because they were harassing her all hours of the night. You know, and that shouldn't be the way it is. They even started up their own little chicken hawk group where they can go in there and talk about, you know, how petty they are.
Yeah.
And all this crap about Tyler, you know, if you've ever met the man, you know every bit of that's 100% just bunk.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, Tyler's having a cookout Sunday night from 5 to 7 up in Claremont at the pavilion at Claremont Park, I believe. Gonna have barbecue, gonna have games, gonna have food, you know, drinks, and you can get there and gonna have a few special guests. He hadn't said who they are, but you know, go up there and he'll sit down and talk to you. Get to know the dude. He's one of these guys that he's just not going to shake your hand and say, hey, I'd like to have you vote. He'll sit there and listen to you and talk to you. He cares. And that's why he's doing this stuff. So get up there Sunday night from 5 to 7 and he's having it. It's a kickoff early voting cookout. You know, go get you some free food and get to know Tyler a little bit.
What else we got?
And also, we got another thing on the sheriff that keeps coming out. They publicly stated that he is no longer dating his felon girlfriend.
Oh, man.
He got locked up, and the state filed papers like this matters, but said he had enough alcohol in the system on Thursday afternoon that would kill somebody. Well, that's all subjective because each person got a bigger tolerance than the others. And anyway, and then it said that they got a tip that Couch was driving drunk. That's why the sheriff went after him. And the more that the county releases about this stuff, the more it makes them look just as bad as Couch.
Trying to set him up, yeah.
I mean, if Couch, they said they were going to go question him and get his county vehicle, is why the leadership went after him. Don't give me that garbage. if that's what you were going to do, follow him, let him get to the house and go to his freaking house. Don't pull him over in his driveway and lock him up. I mean, come on. He was home by that point. They knew they had trackers on that vehicle. They set him up. They knew he got his vehicle and he left. And they probably followed him. And he didn't mess up and do something. They had reason to pull him over until he got right to his house. It makes everybody look bad all the way around. They just need to clean the whole dang shooting match out and be done with it. So, this is just turning into a clown show.
I'm just kind of surprised. Well, I mean, I get it. Maybe Kemp's just kind of waiting for all the facts to be disclosed and whatnot. They should have been fired by now.
Until he goes to court, they really ain't nothing you can do.
Right.
Because it's all, we know it's what happened, but it's not been proven in court. So
who do we got lined up for guests? Do we have anybody for next week or anything? Or
Susan's gonna come on when she gets back. She's out of town. She's had a vacation planned for a couple of weeks. I mean, about a couple of years to go to Alaska with her family and some friends, and they went and she could, who knew that this is gonna go into a runoff. So but she's gonna come on when she gets back, and I put feelers out. We're going to have a couple of members on that got.
Oh, Corey? On the
Corey, and I'm hoping to I'm going to reach out to Jeff Dale and a couple of others that got put on the impact fee committee. And
can we get Chris Braswell on there too?
Huh?
That's like, can we get Chris Braswell?
We might could. He might come on.
I'd love to talk to him about that in a public setting.
Yeah.
What about Cam Henderson? Or what's that guy's name?
I don't know. We might have to get Kathy's approval on that one.
Yeah. Honestly, look, if Kathy wins the runoff, I would love to have Kathy on and talk to her about a lot of this stuff over the last, she's been in there last 12 years, 16 years.
12 years. This will be her fourth term. It'll be 16 years after this term.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that'd be great to have her on too. Yeah. So
we reached out to Mark Turner. I did, and tried to get him to come on. He didn't even respond.
What are we gonna talk to him about? He's gonna say change. Hey, vote for me. Change.
I just wanted to hear.
It's about time. It's about time. We need change. I'm the man.
I just wanted to hear him say it from his own mouth, what his plans were and how he would be different than Kathy.
The dude has no plans, no different than Kathy.
And then we got.
Actually, I would say it might be a drop off from Kathy, but yeah. Anyways,
It can't be no worse than Kathy. She's vote. I mean, a vote with the other two amigos, the vote with the other two amigos, no matter who does.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I get what y'all are saying, but he's gonna vote the same way. He's just gonna be a different amigo at that point.
And if Shannon gets in, it'll be 4-1.
4 amigos, yeah, sure, exactly. So
Gibbs.
I mean, at that point, I think Hall County in general is cooked. Like,
it's gonna be hard because
you're gonna have to wait until another 4 years. Well, I guess 2 years, because then you got Billy and Jeff coming up for election. So that's another chance.
Jeff, he wasn't gonna run again, but rumor has it that if Kathy gets back in and possibly, he's thinking about running again. So there
I think he should. Why not? He's an incumbent, so why not? He should run.
Let
somebody take him out. Somebody's got to take him out. I think as long as you're the incumbent, you should run, unless you're just retiring or something like that, and somebody else should be able to replace you with an election. So
see, that's where Steve messed up. And he admits it. He hates it to this day. He term limited himself. He had it in his mind. He was serving 2 terms.
Sure.
They got the county fixed and got Tom Oliver out of there, who was crooked as a dog's hind leg. He was Billy Powell, except he was the commissioner.
Was he the chairman?
Yeah. and they got him out, but nobody knew Richard Higgins was going to do what he did when he got in there.
Yeah.
And also,
Did you, by the way, speaking of chairman, did you see the monologue from the last meeting from Gibbs?
oh yeah, at the end,
Yeah.
where he put Hall County on tilt.
Yeah. I really wish he would name drop people sometimes.
I do too.
That'd be a little interesting to see who he was referring to, but you know, hopefully he's had some strong conversations with the guy that he originally appointed to the planning board or to the planning commission too, for all the BS that he's doing. So in this campaign.
Yeah. No, it's fixing that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Oh yeah, the last thing I did want to talk about is Jody brought it up at the last. Two things I want to bring up real quick. Jody and Casey got into it at the Tax Assessors board Tuesday. Casey was there. He hadn't been like 6 out of the last 8 meetings or 6 out of the last 9 or whatever it is. He shows up to vote on something he's supposed to recuse himself from. Casey Riles. And Mandy already put him on tilt. Mandy had, before the meeting, at the first comment section, and then when Jody got up there during commission time, she called Casey out for not recusing herself. And I hadn't seen the video yet. I've been trying to get it and watch it, but they said it was about turned into a knockdown drag out. Casey just got to go. If he ain't gonna show up at the meetings, and then he ain't even passed his freaking test. He's supposed to take 40 hours in classes at the University of Georgia, unless he's passed them in the last couple of weeks. He's supposed to do that within 12 months of getting put on the board.
Well, I mean, who appointed him to the board? They need to be holding him accountable for it.
Casey was done by
Greg Poole.
Poole.
Yeah, figured.
Yep.
Makes complete sense.
That Lula Mafia up there.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And then you have Zach Probst that's come out. Jody's got the documents. I hadn't seen them yet, but Probst got fired for the most part. So we paid him a $300,000 salary plus a year's insurance. And Gibbs and Poole are acting like I didn't even know what the hell was going on when it was brought up. So that means, who the hell did he meet with?
The three amigos that appointed him. Yeah.
And that's what.
Well, yeah, like isn't that what Steve said though? Steve Gailey is you need 3 out of the 2, right? Or 3 out of the 5. So. But
the thing is, those other 3 amigos ought to say, look, we've got to run it past Greg and Dave, just to be sure it's done on the up and up.
Right, but they've never done that though. They've never. These 2 are out of that club, so they're not. They're gatekeeping as much as they can, as long as they can, because they're not part of their good old boy club.
Yeah, and South Hall's just screwed with either one of them. Poole, he started voting. We got to get Tyler in there. At least he can call people out and try to hold them accountable and let the public know what's going on. And here Probst is, if he got fired, we need to know why he was fired. They can't be signing no damn NDAs.
I mean, that's public. Yeah, right? It's public record.
Our money,
Yeah.
That is taxpayer money. And every one of them, anytime anybody asks, they're acting like they got freaking nuclear secrets in a briefcase strapped to their arm.
It's gonna take some legal power, maybe some court documents, and maybe a couple of pages of legal action, court case, something.
Yep.
And open up those can of worms.
Yep, no doubt. So we will be on next week sometime. Early voting starts. We'll try to do this. You'll try to do one next Wednesday?
Possibly, yeah. Just depends.
That'll be good with us because
Depends on the baby.
Huh?
So it just depends on the baby.
Oh yeah, I get it. I don't miss them days. Mine's 26 and 24, and sometimes I have to treat them like they're freaking newborns. They never grow out of it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Anything else you got you want to talk about?
No. Again, we got early voting for the runoffs and whatnot next week.
Yep.
Even if you're not voting, even if you don't know who to vote for the governor race or anything that comes up, it's okay to leave it blank. Go vote for the people that you know, that you trust, and go vote for them, and then leave the rest blank if you don't feel comfortable between what's his name Jackson and what's his name Jones, or for the U.S. Senate or any of that.
Yeah.
Just go vote.
I'm leaving the governor's race blank and the primary. I'm not voting for either one of them.
Right.
But if any of this local stuff, if y'all do not know or need any information, just message Viral or myself, and we will talk to you on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, or you can, our emails are on the website. Shoot us an email, and we will answer you to the best of our ability, and get you the information that you need, or try to answer any questions that you got. So,
yep,
just go out there and vote. I mean, there's a lot of runoffs on this ticket. So, it's not, but the main thing is vote for local, vote Board of Education, vote Susan Smith for the board. She's the most qualified person. There's several people that, that it don't matter, but then vote for who you want in South Hall, and vote for Tyler. And because if you get to know Tyler, there's no doubt he's the best option between the two candidates that are out there. So just go vote next week. I think it's just Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at any of the voting centers. And we will hopefully have some information on some of this other stuff next week, because we got a lot of stuff, a lot of irons in the fire that we just can't comment on or report right now. So we appreciate y'all listening, and we will be back next week.